Hi guys, Angel Eowyn here with the Angel Files. In this video, I have put together a summary of some of the Mandela effects that have appeared on certain art pieces. Number one is The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. This is how it is now. Many people do not recall the tumblers or glasses of wine on the table. Aside from the fact that glass did not exist then, so why would it be portrayed? The second big ME here is the doorway that appeared at Jesus' feet. In the original, in another timeline, the part below the table was free of any objects and Jesus' feet could be seen. Also, it is worth mentioning here that many people remember seeing some kind of chalice or goblet in front of Jesus. I'm one of these people and I remember seeing it on his left side. Also worth pointing out here is the clip from the film Da Vinci Code. Ian McKellen, who plays Sir Lee Teabing, says quite clearly, "No single cup, no chalice." The image in the film, unfortunately, is as it is today, so no residue there, but there is a huge discrepancy here.
How many wine glasses are there on the table?
One, the Holy Grail.
Open your eyes. No single cup. No chalice. Well, that's a bit strange, isn't it?
Number two is the Vitruvian Man, also by Leonardo da Vinci. Now he has only 2 arms and 2 legs that don't seem to be symmetrical. There are 2 changes here. The first change is the number of arms. For many, this used to have 2 legs and 3 arms. Some people even recall 3 legs. The second change is the direction of the feet. Many remember the feet pointing straight ahead, not as it is now, with 1 foot and leg slightly turned. This just looks plain weird to me. Number 3 is the Mona Lisa. Few paintings can have been studied more throughout history than Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, the most famous work of art in the world, according to Wikipedia. Even her expression has come under intense scrutiny, that enigmatic smile, the smile that was not a smile, but the hint of one. There are numerous references to this in history. Many of the spoof paintings made by amateurs still retain this mysterious look. However, in today's world, the Mona Lisa has a smile. It is on her lips and in her eyes. I managed to find some residue and somebody very kindly made a GIF to highlight the differences between the 2 versions. The one on the right is the official version in Wiki. Number 4, The Creation of Adam by Michelangelo, which forms part of the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Many people remember the original with God's finger coming from above. Now it is level with Adam's, if not just a touch below. I found some residue in the form of a Muddy Waters album, Fathers and Sons, which clearly depicts the famous painting. Thing is, the depiction on the Muddy Waters album seems to be closer to what people remember. However, the image on the vinyl itself is closer to that of today's version. Number 5 is The Thinker by Auguste Rodin. The Thinker statue is one of the most interesting MEs out there, for a few reasons. Firstly, let's examine how it is today. He has his hand resting on his chin, as though he is chewing on his knuckles. This arm is stretched over and leaning on the opposite thigh, along with his left arm. An unnatural and uncomfortable pose. I mean, try this, guys, for yourselves. Try doing this pose with both arms on your left thigh, and then try doing it on separate legs, and see which one is more natural. And his hair reminds me of a Trump bad wig day. There is some very interesting residue for the Thinker. You can see people taking pictures in front of the statue, posing in the original pose that we remember the statue doing. Is this just a coincidence that they're posing in the exact same position that people remember? Or were they all just that oblivious to not pay attention to the actual pose? If so, why are they all posing the exact same way? Now, we can say that people can easily mistake the pose, even though they're right in front of it, but mistake it in the exact same way? If so, why are there only 2 versions of the pose? People would mess it up in all kinds of different ways, wouldn't they? Even George Bernard Shaw poses in both realities. In 1906, he posed for the clenched fist on the forehead, and then 4 years later, in 1910, he poses with the hand under the chin, which raises some interesting questions, and it shows the possibility that both versions really did exist. So, were one of these pictures taken in a different reality? The description of this miniature thinker is quite interesting. The Thinker sculpture by Auguste Rodin is one of the most famous pieces of art in the last 200 years. It is easily Rodin's most celebrated piece. This is a fine copy of the thinking man in his famed hunched pose, with his fist on his forehead. Many wonder if he is contemplating or grieving. Another interesting point that I stumbled across was the indirect connection to another ME that is on this video, the creation of Adam, where the position of God's hand is in question. Rodin also made a sculpture called the Hand of God, and on one website that I found, it is referenced in connection with the Thinker sculpture. I just thought I would mention it. This is Rodin's quote translated into English. "What makes my thinker think is that he thinks not only with his brain, with his knitted brow, his distended nostrils and compressed lips, but with every muscle of his arms, back and legs, with his clenched fist and gripping toes." There are also numerous clippings of art reviews and descriptions where the statue was described as having a clenched fist to the forehead. Also, do not forget the well-known bodybuilding pose that is called the Thinker. It seems that this ME has also flip-flopped perhaps more than once. There is some confusion to this. I will just leave all relevant links below in the description for you to browse and make up your own minds. Number 6 is Grant Wood's American Gothic. This is how it is today in this reality. Many remember, however, the woman's eyes looking straight ahead instead of veering to the left as it does here. As I was going through some of the comments in Reddit about this, I came across two curious points. The first being a connection to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, in particular the song The Time Warp. I put the link below. Because the American Gothic is hanging in the background at the beginning of the video. Also worth noting, in the Time Warp, there is also a globe focused on South America, a skeleton with the old anatomy, and the movie itself also features Meatloaf, The Last Supper, and the creation of Adam, two effects in this video alone, and some say has more ME references than anything else. The second curious point is that some people remember the woman in the painting being older with grey hair. And suddenly I was hit with a distinct memory of this. I've not had the chance to look into this further, as I tend to research these points as I go along with the video. It could be that I have seen a parody of this painting with the woman in it being older. I don't know. All I can say is that when I read this in Reddit, it was like, wow, yes, I remember now. Even an image of it flashed in my mind's eye. So I was springboarded onto another article, which I found highly amusing. But then I read the article further. I was ever so slightly dumbfounded. The article is about a painting portraying Trump as Borat. What surprised me was the suggested titles for this. Now, remember, when I do these videos, I already have a list of what I'm going to cover, but I research further as I go along. And here on the list, on the article, is the thong side of history, the Lost Supper, I've got the Lost Supper in this video, the Mona Lisa, I've got the Mona Lisa in this video, Hairy Night, Actual Scream, I've also got the Scream portrait in this video, the Persistence of Memory, You Can't Unremember, well, that sounds very Mandela-ish to me, and A Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande. So yeah, the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, and Scream, and the reference to the memory. This was simply too good not to add to the video. Make of it what you will. I call it synchronicity at its most humourful. Number 7 is The Portrait of King Henry VIII by Hans Holbein. The portrait is a lost work by Hans Holbein the Younger, depicting Henry VIII. It was destroyed by fire in 1698, but is still well known through many copies. It is one of the most iconic images of Henry and is one of the most famous portraits of any British monarch. It was originally created in 1536 to 1537 as part of a mural showing the Tudor dynasty at the Palace of Whitehall, London. First, I have to point out the name here. The original artist was Holbein. Bein is German for leg, and Holbein, by the way, was German. So I guess it is no great surprise that this Emmy is all about a missing turkey leg. Many people remember Henry VIII holding a turkey leg, and from what I have read, this is one of the hardest Emmys to find residue on. It simply doesn't exist. I find this interesting in itself. The original painting no longer exists. It was destroyed, and no residue can be found on this one at all. Yet many swear they remember it. Even I do. I remember him holding it in his right hand, so left as you're looking at the portrait. Now, when I look at the portraits, I see a pair of gloves, so it's not blindness that has tricked me. And I have to add at this point that I am an extremely visual person. I remember things better through visuals. I learned through visuals. I was a teacher for many years. I taught through visuals, so it's a pretty reliable source for me. There's certainly enough evidence that the popular notion of Henry VIII is associated with an image of him holding a turkey leg. I and others could have sworn there was a Renaissance-era painting depicting him with a turkey leg, but searching Google turns up nothing of the sort. I did find a website called warpbreach.com that has an article on the foods that time forgot, and there is a section that describes turkey legs, the favoured sceptre of kings. Note the caption below. King Henry VIII is often portrayed holding a large drumstick in one hand. Apparently, forming new religions and beheading wives makes a person extremely hungry. Not exactly residue, but evidence suggesting that others believe this portrait did indeed exist at some point. Number 8, The Scream by Edvard Munch. Referenced in everything from Home Alone to the horror movie Scream, and the source of countless parodies, Edvard Munch's painting is one of the most famous paintings of all time, sometimes also referred to as The Cry. It is known for its expressionistic colours, bright swirling sky, and of course its mysterious subject, a person clasping their face, screaming in anguish alone on a dock. Emphasis on the anguish, also emphasis on horror. Many people are now saying, including me, that the expression has changed on the person's face. It is no longer full of anguish. It is more like an ostentatious, effeminate, oh dear, if that makes any sense. This painting used to terrify me, and believe me, I'm into horror, so I don't get terrified easily, but this painting was always so dark for me, and when I say dark, I mean sinister. There are 2 MEs attached to this, the second one being that now, in this reality, 4 versions of this painting exist, whereas only one existed before. I'm guessing that that was the original that no longer exists, where the scream was much more anguished. Number 9, Tutankhamun's mask. Today it is depicted with having 2 figures on the headdress, a vulture and a cobra. Here's the thing, many recall seeing only a single cobra centered on the forehead, but apparently this new vulture has history, representing Tutankhamun's rule over Upper Egypt, whereas the cobra now symbolizes Lower Egypt. This is the official reasoning in this reality for these 2 figures appearing on the mask. So let's take a deeper look at this and examine why this just doesn't make any sense. 1. The vulture looks added on. It breaks the symmetry, and this is something the Egyptians were obsessed with. 2. This would make Tutankhamun's mask the only pharaoh's mask with 2 figures on it. All the other pharaoh's masks only have the one, so what makes Tutankhamun so special in this reality? 3. The Ushabti figurine found in the tomb of Tutankhamun has only the cobra. These funerary figurines were placed in tombs among the grave goods and were intended to act as substitutes for the deceased. 4. It was normal to represent Upper and Lower Egypt in other ways, by using the lotus and papyrus and placing them somewhere in their tomb or coffins, but generally not on the mask itself. There is no other example of using both the snake and the vulture on the headdress to do this. 5. Another way to show the Upper and Lower Egypt sovereignty was to use crowns, which was done in Tutankhamun's case. 6. Even Wiki still recognizes that the uraeus is the stylized upright form of an Egyptian cobra, used as a symbol of sovereignty, royalty, deity, and divine authority in ancient Egypt. Nothing to say it was a symbol of Lower Egypt on its own. So, in a sense, we have two MEs here. One being the two figures on the death mask, as opposed to only one, the cobra in the center, as many remember, and the other being the assignment of the cobra to Lower Egypt and the vulture to Upper Egypt, as opposed to the cobra and vulture not symbolizing Lower and Upper Egypt. The point here is, if Lower and Upper Egypt were represented already in the crown and elsewhere, why put them both on the mask as well, when none of the other pharaohs displayed this on their masks? Oh, and one more thing. The colossal statue of Tutankhamun. The Oriental Institute excavated two of these statues. One was graciously given to the University of Chicago by the Egyptian government. The other is in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Here is the description of the statue taken from the University of Chicago's website. A cobra goddess, Uraeus, that was thought to spit fire at the king's enemies, rears above his forehead. So on the statue, only the cobra is displayed. Number 10, God's bare butt. So Michelangelo paints God's bare butt on the Sistine Chapel ceiling and nobody notices for 500 years? Seriously? It's definitely God too, because this image forms part of a story where the same figure is seen next to it creating the sun and the earth. Also, it's actually mentioned in the Bible. Exodus 33, God was talking to Moses. And I will take away mine hand, and thou shalt see my back parts, but my face shall not be seen. So this springs from nowhere, and not one comedian ever mentions it, and we're all supposed to not only have had bad memory all these years, but bad eyesight too. As someone in Reddit suggests, it sounds like a Monty Python sketch. Number 11, the horns of Moses. This one is more interesting than I originally anticipated. I mean, I knew about this ME a while ago, but because it didn't really interest me, I never had the desire to really look into it deeper. But now that I have, well, first of all, there are two major MEs attached to this. One being the horns themselves that have appeared on many Moses statues, and the other ME being the Bible changes that have accompanied this. And when Moses came down from the Mount Sinai, he held the two tables of the testimony, and he knew not that his face was horned from the conversation of the Lord. And Aaron and the children of Israel, seeing the face of Moses horned, were afraid to come near. And they saw that the face of Moses when he came out was horned, but he covered his face again, if at any time he spoke to them. I can also see that many people associate these horns with the devil, Satan, Lucifer, whatever. I can understand that, but I see this differently. Yes, it is perhaps a warning or even a message, but not the one we think. I don't believe this is Satan's doing. In some ways, this reminds me of the swastika, which, by the way, has also changed at least twice. When you see a swastika, what's the first thing that comes to mind? The Nazis, of course. But the original swastika had nothing to do with the Nazis. It wasn't designed by them. They took it as their own and cloaked it with their own evil. The same applies here. If we look at what horns symbolized in ancient times, Horns symbolized power, knowledge, and initiation into the secret mysteries of Gnosis. They also signify the power in our minds found through our hippocampus, in which we form all memories and regulate emotions. Now, I find this interesting because of the memories and regulate emotions part. Memories is a key factor of the Mandela effect, and I believe that we can change reality through our emotions. And I'm not alone with this thinking. Different groups of scientists have performed a series of experiments. They concluded that human DNA literally shapes the behavior of light photons.